indirect manufacturing costs per unit with both the traditional and the activity-based costing methods. The following information is provided for Orbit Antenna Corp., which manufactures two products, low-gain antennas and high-gain antennas for the use in remote areas. Then we have activities and costs and the allocation base. And then down below we have each product and we have total labor hours, number of setups, and number of machine hours. Orbit Antenna plans to produce 125 low-gain antennas and 225 high-gain antennas. Compute the indirect manufacturing cost per unit using direct labor hours for the single plant-wide predetermined overhead allocation rate. Then second, we'll compute the activity-based costing and direct manufacturing cost per unit for each product. So we'll start out with just looking at the predetermined overhead allocation rate using a single plant-wide. To calculate the rate, we use total estimated overhead costs and divide that by total estimated quantity of the allocation base. And so in our case, we have total indirect manufacturing cost of $88,000, and it wanted us to use direct labor hours for the single plant-wide rate. And so we have total direct labor hours of 5,000 estimated. So 88,000 divided by 5,000 gives us $17.60 per direct labor hour. So now we can pull that predetermined overhead allocation rate down, 1760 times the actual quantity of the allocation base used. And so for low gain antennas, sorry, my brain can't see today. Direct labor hours, 1,200 for low gain, so I'll put 1,200 here, and then multiply 1,200 times 1760 for 21,120. Now divide that by the number of units of low gain produced, and that was 125, which was given here. That shouldn't be dollars though. And so we get a manufacturing overhead cost per unit, 21,120 divided by 125, so 168.96. For the high gain antennas, we have that same 1760, because this is just a plant-wide allocation base. The actual quantity of the allocation base used was 3,800. So we can multiply the quantity times the allocation rate for 66,800. And that was for 225 antennas. And then we divide those for 297.24 total manufacturing overhead costs per unit. So then part 2 is asking us to do the same thing except using the ABC. So predetermined overhead allocation rate is still total estimated overhead costs divided by the total estimated quantity of the overhead allocation base, but we're just going to do two different bases, one for setups and one for machine maintenance. And so as far as setup goes, we have estimated cost of 58,000, and the total number of setups is 80. So 58,000 divided by 80 total setups gives us $725 per setup. For machine maintenance, we have estimated cost of $30,000, and that's based on number of machine hours. And so we have total machine hours down here of 5,000. Take our 30,000 divided by 5,000 and get 6 per machine hour. So now I'm going to make this Excel sheet a little bit bigger. So now we can plug this information into our table for low gain antennas and high gain. And we're going to look at setup and machine maintenance to get the total manufacturing cost before we divide by units. So the predetermined overhead allocation rate for setup is $725, and the predetermined overhead allocation rate for machine maintenance is 6. And then we're multiplying that by the actual quantity of the allocation base used. So when we come up to number of setups, we have 40 for low gain. And machine maintenance or machine hours, we have 3,000. And so we can multiply across our row here, the 725 times 40 gives us 29,000 in setup costs and 18,000 in machine maintenance costs. Add these together for total costs of 47,000. The number of units was 125 low gain. 47,000 divided by those 125 units gives us 376 per unit. Now we'll do the same thing for high gain, and so we are going to maintain the rate of 725 and for the setup and 6 per machine hour. The high gain has 40 setups and 2,000 machine hours. So again, we're going to multiply across our row, 29,000 in setup costs, 12,000 in machine maintenance costs, and add those together for a total of 41,000 total manufacturing overhead costs divided by the 225 number of units for 182.22 per unit. And so you can see the importance of this activity-based costing rather than the standard plant-wide rate, because under the standard plant-wide rate, we're assuming that the high gain needs an overhead of 297 versus 168 for the low gain. So it seems like the high gain is costing us $128 more than the cost to produce a low gain. But actually, when we break it down and look at the machine maintenance and the difference that makes on the products based on the number of products being produced, the cost to produce a low antenna is actually significantly more than the high gain. So we can see it's actually $193 more costly for us to produce the low gain antenna.